Hello and welcome to Honest Faith Conversations. As always, I am your co-host, Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about Broadchurch Series 3.
Oh, yes, because it is a British television show, so it'd be series.
Yep.
So, right off the bat, we want to say that there will be spoilers for Season 3 of Broadchurch, or Series 3 of Broadchurch. If you haven't seen the first two, you really should, because...
They're available.
Yeah, they're available. They're on Netflix, and David Tennant is in it, and so he's fantastic. He is my acting role model. Jodie Whittaker is in it, and so I think she's fantastic, and why I'm excited for her to be the Doctor.
Yeah, especially this last series. I really do think that they allowed her to expand her acting ability besides, Heartbroken Mom.
Yeah, she really did have a good range.
Yeah. We should also put some trigger warnings in here too.
Yes.
If you haven't watched it, you should know that we're going to be talking about rape as well as sexual assault
and abuse.
Yes.
So that will be coming up in the show. There's your fair trigger warning there.
Yep. So if you're not quite comfortable hearing about this, then it's okay to skip this one.
Yep. So our review and summary, brief summary of the series, Series 3.
Yes.
Which would be that this one is focused around a rape that happens in the town, and this is of course the small town of Broadchurch, and same characters that we've had before, checking in the lives of course the Latimers during this time.
Yep.
Beth is now a social worker kind of person, and you're obviously following the detectives Miller and Hardy as they're trying to figure out this case. And like always, it's not just your basic procedural drama.
Yeah.
It's more of a small town British drama in the setting of procedural drama.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I would definitely classify it as being obviously very British in style, seeing that it's coming from there. You do, like you said, it's not what we would consider to be a normal cop show, just because it does dive more into the gossip scene of the small town, and to me, I find that very, very British.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Was
Your
that
summary.
my summary? Nope. Okay. Summary.
I don't know. You cut off my summary, so that was.
I was elaborating on your summary.
Okay.
My summary. So, Hardy and Miller are working together again, and everything in the town, seems to be normal for the most part. They've kind of moved on from the trauma that happened with the little boy. But we're experiencing a different kind of trauma, and it's a mystery. I don't know. I don't know what else to say without giving too much away.
All right. Well, we did give spoiler warnings, so.
That is true. I've been trying to not make it so, because there's a lot that happened. And
there is a lot that happened.
And this isn't just one of those, jumping from point A to point B, because there's so many things in between that matters between point A and point B.
Yeah, it's not a CSI where it'll be done in an hour. It's it's spend an entire series focused on just one.
Yep, but it's doable in a weekend.
Yeah.
We did.
8 episodes, and we did it in a day and a half, so.
Yeah. Your review.
My review, I really love this television show. I really like British dramas. Most of them come out to be rather well done, because I think they really explore character. That the actors are really invested in characters and fleshing out a character fully. I think David Tennant does a fantastic job of doing this in whatever role he's in. Like I said, he's my acting role model. And I was just noticing in the first episode that he was able to communicate so much in just a few looks that it was kind of like, oh, okay, no need for exposition because he's already communicated it.
Yep. Any more about your review?
No, I've already said about Jodie Whittaker.
Okay.
I found that she was fantastic. I will talk a little bit more about Father Paul, who I was going to continue to refer to as Rory because he was Rory in Doctor Who.
Yep.
But, I will talk about him a little bit further on. But, I was really struck by a moment in this series, which I think is just a personal thing. But
yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff that I think that people from all different kinds of walks of life will be struck by in this series, even if it's just like something little. My review, I would put this like in order of like best series to like not so good, even though all of the series for Broadchurch have been pretty good. I would still put season 1 as being my like the top. I would put series 3 as being number 2 in my most favorite, and then the second season would be number 3.
All right.
Or second series. Sorry, I'm trying to keep my lingo correct.
Yeah, I know. Your consistency is way off.
I know. I'm really sorry. I'm at least aware of it, and I'm trying to fix it.
Okay. Series number 2 didn't really... It jumped between the trial and another thing that they were trying to figure out, but I think that was a bit too much for them, and I think that it really should have focused mainly on...
It became more of a courtroom drama in my view, and those kind of tend to put me to sleep a little bit, but it was still pretty good. Like there were still a lot of twists and turns that I did not see coming, so.
Yeah. Well, obviously, this is what we're going to be talking about today.
What?
So I really wanted to focus on pride in this one, and I know that may seem a little counter what the series is about, but I don't think so much, and I think it's primarily because, as I wrote about almost a year ago about my own relationship with pride, is that I really feel that pride is really one of the only sins that is out there. It's when you forget to see others outside of yourself. Mm-hmm. It's when you've become so consumed with yourself, with your own kind of power or your own bravado or whatever it may be, that really almost everything can boil down to your own selfishness, that you're really just trying to fulfill your needs rather than anybody else's.
Yeah. And that's clearly displayed in a couple of different characters. I can think of like 3 off the top of my head.
Well, and that's what I was just coming to, was that especially with Mark Latimer in this series, is that he is still struggling with the grief of losing Danny, with losing his son. And that grief, it's a prideful thing that he's not able to really ask for help. That he thinks that going and doing something to Joe will relieve him of this, but it doesn't. That it ultimately leads him to try to commit suicide. Is that that's spoiler, but
we already gave a spoiler.
We already gave a spoiler warning. Is that for him? I think it's he's too proud to ask for help. He's too proud to talk to Beth about it. He's too proud to really kind of ask for help in that. And I think there's a bit of pride in that, and especially for those of us who struggle with anxiety and with depression and stuff like that, that it is a sense of pride, really, because we're trying to protect ourselves by not asking for help.
Yep. We're
protecting our own self-interest because we know how we've been hurt in the past, and we don't want to be hurt like that again. And so I think it's a weird moderation thing. And you also saw this with, obviously, with Leo.
Yep.
With his whole thing and being, throughout the entire series, because he was really the one that was responsible for this, but that his whole thing was he even said it wasn't about pride, or about power, but it was about pride for him. Mm-hmm. That it was in a sense, it was like he said after that was that it was about control. It was feeling in control in that moment, and that's power. And ultimately, I think it's become this way for our entire society, that I think that you can look at Western civilization as a whole as being very prideful.
Yep.
Is that we've become obsessed with like things like Westerns. We've become obsessed with the way it was in the Wild West, when it really wasn't that way.
No.
Is we have this romanticized idea that a man could really be free and could be in control of his own life, and
free to
it's
have
all
syphilis.
Power and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not really ever been that way. We've always been in community, and that's the thing that about humanity that I think a lot of people are missing, is that we don't know how to live with each other because we've decided that it's more important to be an individual than it is about being a community as a whole.
Yep.
And I think that what Broadchurch as a complete series, and I'm using the American term for series for the full 3 seasons there, is that it's really about living in that community. And I love the setting of a small town because I think it's very apropos to the way that the world works, is that as we get larger in our population, that we're all still longing for smaller communities. I think that's what brings us back to the church so often. And I think that, I'll talk about Father Paul here later on, but I just wanted to get that in about pride, because I think that this plays a lot to how all of the characters are interacting in this entire thing. And I really wanted to talk about that first, to bring up something that Trish said a little bit later on, when her daughter asks her if she wants to go out or if she wants to go for a walk, is that she says, no, I don't want to see anybody. I don't, then her daughter brings up how, stores are closing earlier and stuff like that. And she's just like, I don't know why he gets to win. Why does he get to win? And I think this is so much about that, the way that society views things is they give power to the predators.
Yep.
That it becomes this thing where we've become so afraid that we're controlled by our fear. And this especially is striking to me this week because of the GOP tax plan that just came out. And I think that very much is about pride. I see pride written throughout everything that I've heard about it, is that, for me, that's very striking in our societies, that people are still saying, oh, no, this is good for America. And no, it's not. Yep. It tears us apart as a community
All
more.
they're doing is walking around like a peacock, showing off their feathers.
Yeah, and I think that, that's one of the things that struck me, was that why does he get to win? Why do the predators get to win? And so I really was starting to think about abuse, and about how abuse is a predator-prey relationship. That it very much is. In every case, is that people in power will abuse their power.
Yep.
Most of the time it's because they have power, and it's because of that pride. And they want to continue to remain in power, or they want to continue to remain feeling powerful. And I mean, I can even liken this back to what's going on in The Walking Dead right now, is that especially with King Ezekiel, and I know this is going way out of our...
okay. We'll bring it back around.
We'll bring it back around to Broadchurch. But with King Ezekiel, is that, his pride, he was humbled.
Yeah.
And
with what happened. We won't go into more detail because
we haven't given a spoiler alert for that. But I think that it very much is a pride problem. That, and we allow this to happen as a society. We've allowed this culture to continue. We've set it up, and I think that, and I'm going to talk more about this in the church, but I think this is what Paul is struggling with as well. What Father Paul is struggling with is that he's struggling with the fact that he doesn't have control over his congregation anymore. That there's not many people showing up.
Nope.
And so
they only come to him when they want to use him.
When they want to use him. When they need things from God, in essence. And I think that's very telling of the way that the church has been run for so long. that it's been about power. It's been about hoarding power over the defenseless, over people who give over that power so easily. And I think you can see this so much in the evangelical culture in America today, especially with giving over power to the GOP, with giving over power to that party of the government. And that's not the way that it should be. That we are a democracy, that it's about what we as a people, as a community want, not what the rulers want. And I think that what's funny is that the irony was that they were being controlled by this idea that Obama was being a dictator.
Yeah.
And so now it's more or less, okay, you leaders have the power. We gave over the power to Obama. Now you Republicans can have the power, which it's I think a whole big propaganda game, but we're not going to get into that because that's a
different story,
can of worms. But I think it's perpetrating this pride obsession that we have.
Yeah.
This pride obsession that has led into abuse of every kind. And I know that sexual abuse is part of that. Sexual abuse is part of that system.
Oh, yeah.
And I think all kinds of abuse are part of that system.
Absolutely. And again, if you guys have seen this last series, obviously it has to deal with the rape culture. And I mean, that's the thing that happened. That is the inciting incident that happened, is that Trish was raped. She doesn't know who did it. She doesn't know too much of the circumstances. She was hit in the head, so she's very foggy about, what happened and trying to figure out who done it, essentially.
Yeah.
And I just liked, immediately, when she was taken to the office and she was telling her story to Miller, I was like, wow, she is actually taking her seriously. Look at that. She's taking her concern seriously. She is taking her story seriously. That does not happen here. That does not happen in real life.
Yeah, even with the holes in her story, was that they still took her seriously, that she was still the person that was telling the story, that they were believing her first.
Yep.
And this is even what Detective Hardy gets after the other one about.
Yeah, Katie. I think her name's Kate or Katie. I can't remember. I did not write her name down. I should have. But so Kate, I think that's her name, even says, are you sure? Is sure she's not fabricating it? And Detective Miller was just no. Listen, we believe her until it is shown otherwise. She's clearly upset. Something clearly traumatic has happened. We're not just going to write her off. We're going to take her concern seriously.
Yep.
And that doesn't, especially in small towns in America, that does not happen. Because what usually happens is that the perpetrator is somebody who everybody knows.
Yep.
And nobody wants to get them in trouble because, they're a good person. So they just sweep it under the rug and just keep life going.
Well, it's not just small towns, but it's also within churches, too. And this is what spawned the Church 2 movement, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But
yeah. I think, too, during the course of the series, there was way too many questions that came up that didn't matter. And that's what happens in real life, too. There's a lot of questions when allegations of rape come up that simply don't matter, don't really have to do with anything. Couldn't she just be seeking attention?
Yeah.
Couldn't she just be doing this just to get him in trouble? Why? What was she wearing? What was she doing? Was she drinking? Comes up a lot. As in, if she's doing those, then it's understandable why she got raped, and that just really pisses me off.
Well, and I think this is part of that whole thing, was that, were you inviting this abuse upon yourself?
No one is inviting that.
When nobody looks at the predator, and this is what I'm saying, is that it's a part of that pride thing, is we're allowing them that pride instead of allowing the person who was victimized, who was abused, to take back that pride.
Yeah. And something that really just struck me that I was just I was so upset at was when, Kath goes to visit Trish, and she's just why would anybody rape you? Yeah.
And of course she did say that in the heat of the moment because of, what happened with
with her and her husband.
Yeah.
And but still, like that is actually a comment that I have seen in the comment section of articles about women who have been raped. It's a slew of people who are on there going, why would anybody rape her? Like, she's not attractive. Why would anybody do this? I don't believe her because she's not as pretty as, so-and-so.
Oh, I know.
And that it breaks my heart because it can happen to everybody, to anybody.
Well, and I think this is the big thing, too, with that men can be raped, too, and not just by other men.
Yeah.
That it's this thing, well, he must have wanted it then. That's the only way that he could have, well, I guess we do need to put a thing on this one, but is that the only way that he can have an erection? But quite honestly, we don't have control over that. That's not the way it works. Is that, a slight breeze could make us, have an erection. And that's kind of the way it works.
Waking up, going to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have complete control over that. It's just the way that the body works sometimes. It's an involuntary response.
Yep.
And men can be raped by women, and it happened to me, but I'm not going to tell my story. I'm not comfortable enough telling my story about that here, so.
Yep. And I think we need to kind of go into what consent looks like, because something that Leo said just kind of again, just made me so mad. So just I wanted to go into the TV and punch his lights out, but I won't do that because I'm not a violent person. And
and you also don't have that power.
Yes, I also do not have that ability. But anyway, so he said, well, it's just sex. So what? It's just sex. They've had it before. So what? And it's not so what. That is their body. The victim has every right to say yes or no to that situation. And in Trisha's case, that was taken away from her when he hit her over the head and she was knocked out. She did not have the ability to say yes or no. So automatically, as a person, we need to assume that she was going to say no.
Yeah.
There's a great video, it's actually British, about consent, and they kind of relate it to tea. So when somebody comes over and you're making tea, you can ask them, hey, would you like to have tea? And, they may say yes. And during the course of making tea, they may change their mind and say no. You don't sit them down and force them to drink the tea. You just say, okay, you don't have to drink the tea, Yeah. It goes into more detail, but that's just a little example of how tea and consent can go hand in hand, I guess. But it's a good video. I if you have any questions about what consent looks like, that would be a good place to start, I think, just because it really dumbs it down. And in fact, going off of that, I was actually reading that there's a new study that the Journal of Interpersonal Violence did recently that revealed that men perceive women's interest in them as consent for sex. And I think that kind of goes along with, how sometimes men have involuntary erections. That kind of plays with that too. Just because that I may find somebody attractive does not mean that that I want to have sex with them.
Yeah.
And it was a huge proportion of men who thought that.
It's uncanny to me, and I think it does play into a personal pride thing. Is that they're being selfish? Is well, my needs matter above hers because, well, she obviously wanted me.
Just because I find somebody sexually attractive does not mean I want to have sex with them, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah,
you should be able to change your mind. You should be able to have control over what happens to you.
Exactly.
And I think with that, I know that you said you didn't want to tell your story, but I'm going to tell mine. So if this might be difficult for some people, to skip through, I'm totally okay with you doing that. I apologize ahead of time if I get a little too emotional, but it's understandable, and I hope you guys would forgive me on that. But anyway, so with my story, my Me Too story, like many women, it happened in college, which seems to be a big trend is, it happens in college. I actually had a crush on this guy. And he knew that I had a crush on him. I'm pretty sure everybody in the universe knew that I had a crush on him. But we had a couple of classes together. We actually hung out together occasionally. We made out a few times. And from the very beginning, like from the very, very beginning of everything, like I told him, hey, I do not want to have sex with you. Like, period. I do not want to have sex with you. At the time, I was still a virgin, and I wasn't necessarily like waiting like until marriage, but I just didn't want to like have my first time be with like some schmuck I had a crush on, you know? Anyway, so it comes to that time where we were actually over at one of my friend's house, and we were playing some board games. They actually make their own like schnapps, which is delicious, by the way. And so, you know, we were drinking a little bit, but we were mostly playing games. So we weren't like there to get drunk, is what I would say. You know, there just happened to be, you know, drinking there. And it got to the point to where I felt like I had just a few too many drinks. And it was actually in the middle of winter, and in the middle of winter Montana, the roads get really, really icy, especially because when it snows during the day, it melts. And then it gets like this thick layer of ice at night because it freezes over. So just the two, like I had been drinking, plus it being icy outside, I was just like, I'm not going to risk it. I asked if I could just spend the night there. They're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then when I had decided I was going to stay, that's when he also had, you know, decided that he was going to stay too. And I was like, you know, cool, whatever. You know, he had been drinking too, so sure, why not? And so my friend had actually set us up in the living room. I can't remember the exact setup, but anyway, that doesn't matter. So right before we actually like laid down to go to sleep, I told him like very like flat out, like I was not interested in fooling around at all. Like I had to work in the morning. I just wanted to go to sleep. And he was like, fine, that's fine. So we fall asleep. About an hour later, I woke up and he was groping me. So I moved his hand and I told him like, hey, I don't want this. You got to stop. Just go back to sleep. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. I just can't help myself. That's a common line I've heard over and over again from so many other people's stories, is the perpetrator saying, oh, I just can't help myself. Like as if he had no control over it, which is BS. But anyway, so then we lay back down and we try to go back to sleep. I did go back to sleep and I woke up later. He had actually pinned me down, was kissing me, and his hand was under my shirt. I remember feeling like shocked, like I can't believe this is happening right now. Like I told him no already. I tried pushing him off. There was a little bit of a struggle, but I finally broke free and I got up and I just said, essentially, screw you, I'm going home. And at that time, I felt fine enough that I could go home, so I just got into my car and I just went home. The next day, I was really upset about it, so I contacted actually an ex-boyfriend of mine. We were still in contact with each other and we were still on like friendly terms, and so I told him that I was upset, and I explained to him exactly what happened. And I kept on just saying, like, but I know I shouldn't be that upset because he didn't rape me. I know I shouldn't be upset, you know, because, you know, he didn't go that far. But my ex got, like, really, really mad and really, really angry with what happened. He kept on just saying, like, you shouldn't have done that. You said no. You said no, Kathy. And I still just was like, almost like defending my attacker, like saying, yeah, but he didn't rape me. But my ex just kept on saying, but you said no. Like, and that should have been like clicked in my head. Like, I did say no. I told him my expectations from the very beginning. Like, I was not interested in doing anything with him. I just wanted to go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And that should have been it. I now know that the reason why my ex was upset was because he knew that I was sexually assaulted but I didn't realize that I was until very recently. And I think that the reason why I didn't know is because no one really talked about what it looked like to me. Like, I just thought that sexually assaulted meant that somebody was raped. I didn't realize that there was different degrees of it, and that being sexually assaulted is still a crime and shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, that's my story. Okay. I don't know how else to end it, but
yeah. I mean, there's not really a good transition from that.
No. I know it's long. I know I rambled a bit, but
well, and I think that this is something that is important that we should talk about, especially when and where we go from here, is that we need to let people know that their body is their body, their mind is their mind, their feelings are their feelings. That it is not okay for anybody else to impose their own thoughts, their own agenda, physical agenda, or mental agenda, or emotional agenda, or whatever upon you, because that in itself is abuse.
Yeah.
It is abuse when somebody insists on their own way, and that's what I mean by pride. It's insisting on your own way, insisting on your own feelings, your own selfish desires above somebody else's.
And no, you don't have to say no to not give consent.
Yeah.
There's other ways. Like, just because somebody doesn't actually say no does not mean that they still want to have sex with you. There could be things that people say or do that indicate that they're not interested. And I know it's hard sometimes to understand it, but if it's not clear enough, just assume it's a no.
Yeah. And this is why, the two hashtags that I've mentioned before on Twitter came about was Empty the Pews and Church 2. Both of these came about through abuse stories of how people were abused by the church, and especially in the church setting. And there are so many stories about this, and especially because this is the way that these communities are set up. They're set up in preference of the predator rather than their prey. Is that it's a buffet for them.
Yep.
There are so many pastors, priests, and spiritual leaders who got into it because they wanted power.
Yep.
They wanted power over people. They wanted to get their own way. And this is through interpretation of something that, they think the Bible said or whatever, that they will use that to consolidate their power, to use their power. And there are way too many stories of people, not just in sexual situations, but in all sorts of abusive situations. And that's, things that have happened to me over the course of my history with the church, that yes, it was abuse, emotional and spiritual abuse that people took out upon me.
And they used their power in the church as an excuse to be able to do it.
Exactly.
And people let them do it because they're like, oh, well, he can't be that bad.
And the thing is, it's important for us to tell our stories. It's important for us to get it out there, to say these things, because it's important to not let the predator win. It's not okay. It really needs to show people that the power is not in the predator's hands. The power is in our hands. The power is in all of our hands. That we are the people who are giving away that power to other people.
Yeah.
That we are the ones that give the power to our priests. We're the ones who give the power to our representatives. We're the ones that elected them.
Yep. And we have that power to take that away.
Exactly. And we need to practice that right, because honestly, in a democracy, that's what it's supposed to look like, is that we, the people, have the power. That's a part of our Constitution even. We, the people of the United States of America. And I think that this is very important for us to remember, is that we all have this power, but it's a collective power. It is not an individual power. And I think that that's what we continually lose is that we continually lose the fact that it's not an individual power. It's a collective power.
Yep.
That's why it's important for us to be together. And especially with bringing up the rape culture thing is that, we live in a culture that values individual power. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so easy for men to fall into this predator-prey relationship with women. And in fact, there are this language that we use, especially with young boys, is like being the alpha wolf or being like, or using predator language.
Yeah.
And we do this all the time, and it's horrible because it's not. I mean, we prey upon each other. We prey upon the people that are part of our community, and we shouldn't be doing that.
No, and we should be teaching everybody that I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but you're not any better than anybody else.
Exactly. We are all predators, and we're all the prey.
Like, you may be better at certain things than other people, but in terms of how important somebody is, you're not any more important than somebody else. Somebody can always take your place. No matter who you are, somebody can always take your place.
That we are all on the same playing field, that there is no hierarchy. There is no ladder. There is no boat. Mm-hmm. We're all in the same situation. We're all trying to figure out life together as human beings. And I think this is why I love Broadchurch so much, is because I think within the setting of the small community, that it very much shows this. And I think that Father Paul was seeing this throughout this. The moment that really struck me here was a moment at the very end with Mark Latimer and Father Paul kind of exchanging a look. It was kind of a knowing goodbye look for both of them.
Yep.
And I think the reason why it touched me so much was because I saw so much of myself in both of those characters. In both Father Paul and in Mark Latimer, is that, dealing with the loss of our miscarriages, and I knew grief. I knew what that loss felt like to me, and I know it's not the same as losing a child after they've been born, but it's a grief in itself. And also, Father Paul struggling with dwindling congregation, about actually leaving his ministry and all this other stuff, is that that's a part of myself too, was leaving youth ministry.
Yep.
And so I think part of it was that pride, is letting yourself know when it's time, letting yourself know that you got to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And you got to work on yourself. You got to do your own thing, but not in a bad prideful way, in a good prideful way, and in a way that you're actually figuring out how to live in society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's tough, especially when you've thought one way your whole life, and now realizing that that's not the case anymore, that you kind of have to leave that, what you thought was a big chunk of your identity, behind.
Yeah. Very much so. Mm-hmm. Well, with all of that being said, let's wrap up.
Yeah, sorry for the depression, everybody.
But, this doesn't get you to watch Broadchurch Season 3 if you listen to our show before actually watching that. Then hopefully this will get you to watch it. So
yeah.
I don't know why you would listen to our show before actually watching it. But
I don't know. People are strange. There are a group of people out there who prefer to get all the spoilers they can before actually watching
that's true.
stuff. So, like, for me, like, horror movies, like, I have to know how it ends. And then I'm fine. Once I know how it ends,
Should we completely spoil it for them?
No.
Okay.
I'm just saying that's me for horror stories.
All right. So this is our feedback schedule. In no particular order, because I know that we may switch up when we do things, but we've got Christmas Vacation coming up. We've got How the Grinch Stole Christmas. We have the Muppet Christmas Carol coming up. So we may do Muppet Christmas Carol in 2 weeks instead of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, because honestly, I'm not a big fan of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. But
it's okay. Maybe we don't do Grinch Stole Christmas. Maybe we do.
No, you were the one who wanted to do it. So
no, or maybe we can do Christmas Story instead.
Okay. But remember, we were doing this for 4 weeks, so...
Oh, yeah. Oh, or we could do liturgically and extend it.
No, that's what we were doing.
Oh.
Yeah, because otherwise we would have had to start this week.
I was wondering why we weren't... Okay, never mind. Sorry, everybody.
Anyway, if you've got any feedback on that or any of the shows that we have previously done, or even if you want to share your own story with us, give us a call. 720-372-3879. It is a Google Voice number. Just leave your message after the beep.
Yep.
And, we may even use your voice in a future episode and have a conversation with you. You can also find us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, on Reddit, on Tumblr, Google+, Patreon. In fact, be a patron of ours. You can find us on our website, thehonestfaith.com. And, I think that's enough for wrapping it up. With all that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.